In this video, we're going to take a look at genetic material. So genetic material, the one you're most familiar with, is called DNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, which basically refers to the molecule of DNA. And the DNA that you get comes from your parents. And we say that DNA is the blueprint for how a cell basically does everything, how a cell lives, grows, and functions. So everything about you is determined by your DNA. The DNA is like the set of instructions, blueprints, like a set of instructions for what you will look like. So DNA will determine your eye color, your height, what diseases you're more prone to, so on and so forth. So here's an example of what DNA can determine. You'll see, for example, that some people might have earlobes that are attached, whereas others have free earlobes, and that's based on what your DNA says. Also, the ability to roll your tongue or not roll your tongue, that's actually determined by genetics, by your DNA. So some people have DNA that says, hey, you'll develop muscles that allow you to roll your tongue, whereas others say, hey, you know what? You don't have the muscles there that allow you to roll your tongue. Another example, again, DNA can determine things like eye color. And so what essentially happens is that DNA, that deoxyribonucleic acid, has a whole bunch of instructions, and those instructions are basically read and copied. Your ribosomes will take those instructions and make special proteins, and those proteins will give you your eye color. And it's the same thing with your tongue. Whether you can roll or not, your DNA has instructions. Your ribosomes read those instructions and make special protein to either allow you to roll your tongue, or you don't have the protein to roll your tongue. So, where's the DNA kept? Well, DNA is very important because, again, it's the blueprint, the instructions for how the cell will run itself. And if it gets damaged or hurt, then the cell will be damaged. The cell won't run as it should. So the DNA is kept in the organelle called the nucleus. You already know what the nucleus is. And the DNA actually never leaves the nucleus. If we need to read the instructions on the DNA, a copy is sent out, but it never leaves the nucleus. So DNA is protected within the nuclear membrane of the nucleus. So here you can see the way that sort of works here. This is an organism, the human body. If you zoom into the cell, here's the cell. If you zoom into the nucleus, here's the DNA. DNA exists in many forms. This is the chromosome form of DNA. It's basically just DNA wrapped around these proteins. If you zoom in, you can actually see the DNA molecule. And if you zoom in even more, you can see the smaller parts that make up the DNA molecule. But the whole point is that the DNA is found in the nucleus because we don't want it to get damaged. So what I need you to understand about your cells is that each and every single one of your cells, all trillion cells of your body, have the exact same DNA, with some exceptions. But for the most part, every single cell in your body has the same copy of DNA. What that basically means is that all your cells are identical to each other. They're identical to the original cell that you started off as, DNA-wise. They don't necessarily look the same anymore, but the DNA is the same. So the idea is that you started off as one cell, and then that cell made more of itself by dividing. And every time that cell divided and made more of itself, it would copy the DNA that it had. So that's why all the cells in your body essentially have the same DNA. They're clones of each other. So let's take a look at the different ways DNA can exist. If you look at the DNA molecule, we say it looks like a ladder. It's a twisted ladder. So this is the DNA molecule over here, looking like a ladder, but in reality, it's actually more of this twisted shape over here, this little twisted ladder. And that twisted ladder, the name we give it is a double helix. Now, the interesting thing is your cells are very small. You can't even see your cells. That's how small they are. Yet you have 2 meters of DNA inside of each one of your cells. Not in your whole body, but in each one of your tiny cells that you can barely see. So see this little period over here? A cell is even smaller than that you can't even see it, okay? Yet you can fit 2 meters inside something smaller than this period. So how does that happen? Well, your DNA, in order to fit it inside such a small cell, has to be condensed. You sort of wrap it up, almost like if you didn't have a binder, but I gave you notes, to fit it in your pocket, you might have to fold it up and then put it into your pocket. Well, the DNA sort of experiences that. the DNA is wrapped around these proteins. And when you wrap it around proteins tightly, then you can kind of cram it into the nucleus of your cell. So if you wrap DNA around protein, it's now called chromatin. So this is the chromatin form. It kind of looks like spaghetti. But sometimes you have to kind of condense even more. Sometimes you want to move the DNA around and it's too stringy like this. So you can wrap it up even more tightly. If you wrap it up even more tightly, then it becomes the form of chromosomes. So chromatin and chromosome, they're both essentially the same thing. They're both just DNA wrapped around proteins to condense them to fit into the small nucleus. But chromatin is sort of loosely wrapped around the protein, and then chromosome is more tightly wrapped, just so it can be more condensed. So stringy spaghetti stuff is DNA wrapped around protein. We call it chromatin. When we want to condense it even more and wrap it more tightly, it becomes chromosome, still in the nucleus. It's just wrapped more tightly. So this is chromosome, DNA wrapped around protein. Now, one other important aspect over here is understanding some terminology. Here we have a picture of chromosomes in a human. This is called a karyotype. So when you see a picture of chromosomes in the cell of a human, or it doesn't have to be human, it could be really anything, a picture of chromosomes, we call it a karyotype. If you count this carefully, you'll see there's 46 chromosomes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You keep counting these individual ones, and those are 46 chromosomes. We sometimes instead say 23 pairs, like this is a pair, this is a pair, this is a pair, that's a pair, that's a pair. So there's basically 23 pairs, which is 46 chromosomes. Now, within each pair, so this pair here, one comes from one parent and the other comes from the other parent. So your DNA came from your parents. Half the DNA came from parent 1, half the DNA came from parent 2. And we often talk in terms of chromosomes. So we'll say you got 23 chromosomes from parent 1 and 23 chromosomes from parent 2. Parent 1 gives you the egg, parent 2 is a sperm, and that's how the DNA is sort of transferred from parents to you when they make you. So 23 chromosomes come from the egg, 23 chromosomes from the sperm, and when they combine together, they make 46 chromosomes in the first cell that you consist of. So in your body, you have what's called somatic cells. Somatic cells are just your regular body cells, like skin cells, muscle cells, and we sometimes call those cells diploid cells. What that means is that your regular body cells have two sets of chromosomes. Again, those two sets, one of the sets is 23 is from parent 1, one is from parent 2. We also have what's called gametes. Gametes are your sex cells. So some of you have sperm and some of you have egg. So sex cells are basically not your body cells. They're your cells you would use for reproduction, sperm or egg. And those are called haploid, meaning they have half the number of chromosomes that your regular body cells have. Haploid for half, diploid for 2 sets, haploid for 1 set. So the sperm has 23 chromosomes, the egg has 23 chromosomes. Again, when you put them together, you get 46. So let's just summarize here. This is a karyotype. This shows you a picture of the chromosomes in a cell. In this picture here, there are 46 chromosomes because a human has 46 chromosomes. So this is a human karyotype. Of those 46 chromosomes, 23 come from one parent, 23 come from the other parent. So 23 in the egg, 23 in the sperm. When they combine, they make 46. Your cells, your body cells, like skin cells, muscle cells, those are called diploid because they contain the 2 sets of chromosomes, 23 from each parent. The gametes, which are your sex cells used for reproduction, sperm and egg in other words, they are haploid because they only have half the number of chromosomes. They have 23 each. So again, here you can see the karyotype and you can see all the chromosomes. This is a somatic cell because there's 46 chromosomes in this picture. So what is a zygote? A zygote is the single cell that you started off as. So when you were made by parents, you were made by sperm and egg combining. So the sperm, we say, fertilizes the egg. When the sperm and the egg come together, they make the one cell called the zygote. The sperm was haploid, the egg was haploid. Once a zygote is made, it is diploid. And eventually that one cell will divide over and over and over and over and over again to make trillions of cells, which make up you. So you can see this image here. This is the egg or ovum. This is a sperm. When they combine together, they make the zygote. When you have haploid, we usually represent that by N, just one N, and the sperm, one N as well. But when they come together to make diploid, it's 2N. And so all these chromosomes in here, these 46 chromosomes, they have the DNA instructions that will basically tell you what you're going to look like when you grow up. Now, I said humans have 46 chromosomes. Different species have different numbers of chromosomes. So a hamster cell would have 22 chromosomes, whereas goldfish have over 100 chromosomes. But the idea kind of works in a similar way. So for example, if I talk about humans, based on the fact that humans in their diploid cells have 46 chromosomes, well, what you would know is that the sperm would have 23 chromosomes and the egg would have 23. You could apply that to the hamster. Think about how many chromosomes the sperm of hamster would have and the egg, right? Just divide by 2, 11 and 11. So when the sperm combines with the egg, you get 22 chromosomes. And then eventually cell division happens and you make a whole hamster. Goldfish, similar idea. If they have 100 chromosomes in their somatic or diploid cells, while in their sex cells or their gametes, they must have 50 chromosomes. 50 chromosomes in sperm, 50 chromosomes in egg. When you combine it, you get 100 chromosomes. And so if you're interested in biology and knowing more about the number of chromosomes, you can easily look that up to find out how many chromosomes your favorite animals have or favorite plants have. And then you can apply that to, just like we did with humans, to figure out how many chromosomes and gametes would have. So here's another karyotype. And I want you to take a look at this carefully. Notice that it's arranged in pairs again, okay? And if you count the number of chromosomes, you'll notice that we have a pair here, pair there, pair there, pair there. We have a bunch of pairs everywhere. But over here, we don't have a pair. We have a triplet. So we have an extra chromosome here. You'll notice the chromosomes are numbered. Chromosome pair 1, pair 2, pair 3, pair 4. Pair 21 has an extra chromosome. And so this is how important chromosomes in DNA are. If you have too many chromosomes or too few chromosomes, you can actually have developmental disorders. And so here we have a different number of chromosomes. We have 47 chromosomes, and specifically we have an extra chromosome 21. Individuals who have an extra chromosome 21 are individuals that have Down syndrome. And so there's different outcomes depending on which chromosome you have more of or less of. But in this case here, chromosome 21, when we see this karyotype, the individual has Down syndrome.